blames the rise in homicides and shootings across the country on the easy availability of guns and the reaction to a year of COVID. Joining us now, Congressman Jim Banks, head of the Republican Study Committee in the House, who has a different view of the problem and the solution. Congressman, welcome back to Fox News Sunday. I want to start the same way I started with Cedric Richmond. Why do you think there has been such a sharp increase in the number of shootings and homicides in this country over the last 18 months?
Well, Chris, first of all, I agree with Joe Biden. Senator Biden in 2002 wrote an op-ed and he said more cops clearly means less crime. You will not hear Joe Biden say that today, because today Joe Biden is being held hostage in the White House by the Squad and the radicals in the Democrat Party who control their party, who have spent the last year stigmatizing one of the most honorable professions in America, in our law enforcement. It's not just about defunding the police, which they fully support, but over the last year, they've talked about stripping qualified immunity protections for police officers who do their job. They talk about cashless warrants and decreasing sentences as well, a cashless bail, excuse me, and decreasing sentences. It's a recipe that criminals in every city in America are liking what Democrats are selling. And that's why you're seeing unprecedented crime waves across America, murder rates this year alone that are higher than anything that we've seen before, because we've taken police officers off the streets. And now Joe Biden wants to take guns away from law-abiding gun owners who have guns to protect themselves.
But Congressman Banks, let me push back on that a little bit, because in the program that he announced this week, the president said that the central part of his anti-crime package is the $350 billion in the American Rescue Plan, the COVID relief plan that was passed. Take a look at what the president said.
It means more police officers, more nurses, more counselors, more social workers, more community violence interrupters to help resolve issues before they escalate into crimes.
Congressman Banks, you voted against that package, against that $350 billion, just like every other Republican in the House and Senate. So can't you make the argument that it's you and the Republicans who are defunding the police?
Not at all, Chris. I mean, let's go back again and look at the last year and the record of comments that Democrats have made, from Rashida Tlaib, who said that policing is inherently evil.
Sir, respectfully, I heard you make that point, but I'm asking you, there's $350 billion in this package the president says can be used for policing. And let me put up some of the specific things he said.
The point that I'm making is important.
Congressman Banks, let me finish, and then I promise I'll give you a chance to answer. The president is saying cities and states can use this money to hire more police officers, invest in new technologies, and develop summer job training and recreation programs for young people. Respectfully, I've heard your point about the last year, but you and every other Republican voted against this $350 billion.
When Representative Omar says that policing is rooted in evil and Nancy Pelosi compares police officers to Nazi stormtroopers, it makes it very difficult for police departments around the country to recruit people to become police officers. And that's the crisis that we find in police departments all over America. You can give them more funding, and that's good. But if they can't recruit people to become a police officer because we've stigmatized one of the most honorable professions in America, then we're at a dangerous point. And that is directly related to the rise in violent crime across America. If we turn a blind eye to law and order and a blind eye to riots that occurred in cities last summer, and we take police officers off the street, we're inevitably going to see crime rise.
You say that more gun controls are not the answer. You heard former Congressman Richmond say that guns and the easy availability of guns is one of the biggest issues. You say that more gun control is not the issue, and that most of the crimes are committed with handguns, not with assault weapons. But I think you'd agree that assault weapons create an enormous amount of damage, especially in these mass shootings. And, you know, perhaps if we had stricter background checks, that some of the people who shouldn't have handguns wouldn't have handguns. Is there any gun control that you can support?
Well, remember, Chris, that in 1994, when Joe Biden ushered through the so-called assault weapons ban, later the Department of Justice came out and said it did nothing to decrease violent crime. We know that 75% of gun crimes are committed with guns that are illegally obtained to begin with. So what I'm saying is that if we are serious about reducing violent crime in America, then Joe Biden will go on a national public relations campaign to admonish the radical voices in the Democrat Party that have stigmatized police officers and law enforcement. That's the first step toward reducing violent crime, is to support police officers, back the blue. That's what Republicans are doing. I have the only bill in Congress, by the way, to codify qualified immunity protections for our law enforcement agencies. And I invite Republicans and Democrats, sign on as a co-sponsor, show your support for our police officers and our law enforcement. If we do that, we can reduce violent crime.
We're running out of time. I have one other question on a different subject I want to ask you. You just called for bipartisan cooperation. You saw the clarification on the bipartisan infrastructure bill that Joe Biden issued yesterday. I just discussed it with Cedric Richmond. How do you feel about the fact that if Democrats were still to push, now the president said there's no conditioning, no linkage between the two bills, will Republicans sign on to the bipartisan infrastructure bill if Democrats are then going to go ahead and push a multi-trillion-dollar social spending bill?
Well, you saw, as you mentioned earlier in the segment, Chris, you saw Joe Biden already flip-flop from Friday to Saturday. We don't know what he supports at this point. We don't know what a bipartisan deal will look like. He's already gone back and forth again on the reconciliation package, coming with a bipartisan deal. Republicans want to support a bipartisan deal, but not a $4 trillion socialist Green New Deal type infrastructure deal. And right now it doesn't look like Joe Biden is negotiating with Republicans. He's negotiating between the Joe Manchin wing of the Democrat Party and the AOC Bernie Sanders socialist wing of the Democrat Party, not with Republicans.
Congressman Banks, thank you. Thanks for talking with us. Always good to talk with you, sir.
Thank you.
Congressman Jim Banks appeared on Fox News Sunday with Chris Wallace to speak briefly about the rising number of shootings across the U.S., as many Democrats seem to blame COVID and easy access to guns to be the root of the problem. However, we know from my past video, where I detail gunshots since 2015, in almost every major city across the U.S., we see the same trends across the board. Here's a screenshot from the Office of the Comptroller, the official site that logs specific information regarding each shooting. On my previous video, I was highlighting the stats from Philadelphia, but if you were to look at all the major cities, especially those run by Democrat leadership, you will see that they are exactly the same trends. Black males between 18 to 30 are 87.2% more likely to be responsible for pulling the trigger.